Folks, welcome in to sportsbookreview.com. It's time to talk NFL playoff football. And Kyle, I have to say to start the show, this is my second favorite week of the NFL calendar, only to next week's divisional round action, and they gave us a bonus. It's been a tough year for everybody, financially, on the field, COVID, issues all over the place. They're going to throw us a bone and give us a couple extra playoff games, and who says no? Thank you guys for tuning in here on a Tuesday to talk some opening lines on Super Wild Card Weekend. I'm Donnie Seymour, he's Kyle Purviance, and we got an hour show, and we can decompress, we can relax. Kyle, we're usually talking 15 games. We got guests. Not today. This is for the chat box, and this is to say, you know what? The season, let's put a bow on it, and let's hit these 6 games hard.
Yeah, and how about this? We got through all 17 weeks. I mean, we had some pain, some moving parts, but, every game was played. We get to the playoffs, and now we get extra playoff teams. Sure, there's a couple teams in here, especially on the NFC side, you're like, ooh, yuck, how did you make the playoffs? But, hey, who's going to argue with 6 playoff games on Wild Card Saturday? And I'm with you. I love Wild Card Weekend. And then divisional round is also my favorite. I mean, that's when you really get to the nitty gritty and, you got those games. But good Wild Card Weekend, some fun matchups. It's been a great year. Thank you to everyone in the chat box making us a part of your day all the time. Maybe I won't have to spend so long in the unemployment line because you guys have made us look good. So it's a big testament to all of you. And all the wonderful people behind the scenes making us look good. They do a great job. And, of course, Donnie walking me through it so we don't get the check boxes. Been a great year. I'm excited for today.
Now, we're going to have some fun this week, and we have a little bit of time, as I said, to decompress. But before we get to that, the channel's rolling. And I know you guys come in and supported us all year on the NFL, whether you're watching it live, on replay, whatever show we do. It's great stuff by you guys, but also the other things that are going on the channel, the soccer shows that we have, the UFC shows, college football was a great success with the new show we had this year, as well as college basketball now and also the NBA. A lot of great stuff, and that's from you guys supporting the channel so we can come on here, talk, have some fun, trade some information, and win some money. 78,400 people have hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. That is a credit to you guys. Thank you so much for that. If you're watching the show for the first time, again, whether it's live or replay, and you see that red button down there, click that, flip it over to gray, turn your notification bell on. Every time we go live here with programming, you will get that notification delivered. You can come into the chat box and say hello here today like everybody's doing. Jamil's in here, Colin, Randy, let's see who else, Bruno's in here, Jay Peach, Mark Rock. We are ready to get going. The dude Albie's also. Let's have some fun today. But before we get to the 6 games, we've got ample time today. Let's put a bow on the season here. But first, as we do each and every time, let's talk about some winners and losers, but really from week 17 and how we approached it and what we took a look at, because there were a lot of moving parts. And the one thing that gets up right away in everybody's crawl, and I always love to address it, since why, Kyle? I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. So when I take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles tanking a game on Sunday night, you know me. We've watched games live, Monday Night Football, Eagles versus Seattle, and I get so frustrated at my team. But it's been months since I was able to sit back and watch and say, you know what? The organization, as a ownership, front office, head coach, and team, the most complete performance my Eagles had for the entire season, Kyle, was week 17 by making sure they got the best overall pick they can for the health of the franchise. Wonderful night for me with the Eagles, cheering on that Washington football team, Kyle.
Hey, and you know what? It's so funny. I see all Joe Judge, wham. Like, get the hell out of here, Joe Judge. Like, you take the NFL seriously. I've seen the schemes you've ran on the field, so you can shut the hell up, Joe Judge. Then you see today Miles Sanders whining, oh, we weren't happy about it either. What are you talking about? Do you want to be a better team next year? It was absolutely the right thing to do. Number one, you got a decent little performance out of Hurts before he leaves the game. You don't risk any injury. You put in a guy you don't care about, Nate Sudfeld. You keep your young quarterback healthy. It looks like he's going to be your quarterback going forward. You ensure a higher draft pick. Oh, you get to screw over the New York Giants, which there's no question that Eagles fans hate the Giants more than Washington. I mean, that just has to be the case. So you get to screw over the Giants or the Cowboys. It was going to be that way either way. It was 100% the right call. It doesn't bother me one bit that they did that. To me, it showed, finally some smart thinking by Doug Peterson. Like, hey, you guys get it. Let's keep our young players healthy. Let's get a good draft pick. All the other whining and nonsense. Don't tell me that you would never disrespect a game like that, Joe Judge. I watch you run the entire punt unit off the field, and then another like we're in third grade flag football trying to trick the other team. So I think the Eagles did a right thing, and who gives a damn what all the other people say? They just don't seem to get the NFL.
No, and I love it too, because it's not looking at it from a third grade perspective, which a lot of people do. Like, you play to win the game. No, a stupid organization plays that game to win, because when you put the game in context, ready? Let's just say Jalen Hurts goes out in this football game, right? Late third quarter, fourth quarter, he's going to go on a drive to try to win the game. Blows his Achilles out or his knee out. Now, Carson Wentz once out. Jalen Hurts has a damaged knee. Where do you go next year? And the same people that said, oh my goodness, play it all the way through, are saying you guys are so stupid and inept as a franchise that you would play a meaningless game and put your quarterback in harm's way for a sixth, changing offensive line, left tackle and right tackle. It was hilarious to me, the pushback, because if you're the only people that should be upset technically are Giants fans, because they're fans like, oh man, I can't believe the Philadelphia team let us down. But outside of just the Giants fans, if you're dumb enough to watch that game and not understand the simple principle of there's no benefit whatsoever to the Eagles winning that game, and you only hurt yourself, to not look at it objectively and say, damn, the Eagles did the right thing. And also guys like Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders, who, again, Miles Sanders didn't play, so who cares if he was upset or not in Week 17. Maybe he should have faked an injury on the Wednesday report and sat this football game out. Maybe he should have actually got in there and tried to make a difference. But the fact that the ownership and the organization was on the same page to do that, because the other things can come into play as well. Like Joe Judge spouting off, I'll never disrespect it. First off, Joe Judge fist fights like it's Fight Club with his assistant coaches, makes his 50 to 60-year-old assistants run laps and stairs and do push-ups if there's a false start during practice. So who's disrespecting the game overall? Oh, by the way, your point is very valid. How about Joe Judge disrespecting December football by losing 3 in a row in blowout fashion when they had a chance to actually clinch the division themselves? If you have a 6-win team, you have nothing to say against anybody else for what they do in the division. But also, Joe Judge should have sat in that conference and said, you know what? The Eagles didn't do this. You know who didn't do that? Brian Flores went to Buffalo and got annihilated. You know what he didn't do? You know what he didn't say? Boy, forget about the game I could have won today and gotten the playoffs. I am so mad at those Pittsburgh Steelers for benching their quarterback and their good players. So Cleveland won, they got in, and we didn't get in. I didn't hear any of that, Kyle, from the Dolphins.
Exactly, because he gets it. Because how can you, as Joe Judge or even a Giants fan, be like, look, we won 6 games, we belong in the playoffs. Your team,
Kyle, nobody wanted to see the Giants in the playoffs.
I would, honest to God, rather watch.
Oh my God, what a matchup nightmare the Giants would have been for anybody in the playoffs.
Oh God, the Giants would have gotten absolutely stomped. Washington has such a much better chance at beating Tampa Bay or competing with Tampa Bay than the Giants ever would have had. It's just an absolute joke. And if you're whining because your 6-win team didn't make the playoffs, you need a serious reality check. You're one of those guys who loves the participation trophy. You're one of those guys who yells at the little league coach because your son doesn't play enough, even though he can't hit a baseball. Get the hell out of here, Giants fans, Giants players, and also Eagles players whining about not trying to win. If you don't get it, get the hell out of here, because the NFL is a business, first of all, and you want to get better next year. The Eagles will go into next year, and the Eagles will be a legitimate, contender in the NFC East, as all the teams will be. Why mortgage your future in a meaningless game? You look at, it was kind of a different scenario, but look what happened to RG3 back when he was with Washington. Hurts his knee, they rush him back for the playoff game. Boom, blows his knee out. His career is done, and Washington's been looking for a quarterback ever since. I think it was the right move by the Eagles. I think the Giants sound like absolute morons. Nobody wants to see your crappy 6-win team in the playoffs. I'm sorry. Nobody.
No, and I do love the fact, because players always want to win, but it's up to the coach in the front office to make sure they don't win, because obviously they didn't play 7 guys against 11. You still had to play 11 on 11 and, do what you got to do up there. But when you take a look overall at the landscape of it, why would the Eagles players be upset at anybody? Shouldn't they? Let's rewind a week ago when you gave up 900 yards to the Dallas Cowboys and embarrassed yourself out there. How come us as fans didn't come down and pick it and say, we don't even want you to play. We want to cut the entire football team because of how much you stink? It's amazing how 1 week says, hey, and let's keep in mind also, Kyle, did I miss where the Eagles were up 31-0 and just pulled everybody and lost 32-31? They were losing that game. Jalen Hurts was horrendous in that game. It's so fun. I'm glad we were able to catch up and at least talk about this a couple days later, because the fire still burns from Sunday night where I can't even believe the NFL needs to investigate what? The quarterback was 25 of 30 for 450 yards and 4 scores, and you pulled him on the last drive? No. He had a rating of like 20, Kyle.
Exactly. Like, it wasn't this beautiful performance. The game was ugly anyways. The writing's on the wall. And again, Washington has, one of the top 2 or 3 front fours, maybe the best front four in the league. So why risk it? It just doesn't make any damn sense. I am so glad that Joe Judge is out. I have no problem watching this terrible Washington team in the playoffs. And we've sort of heard, you saw the article today, Ron Rivera thinking about rotating quarterbacks, the dynamic duo of Alex Smith and Tyler Heineke in a playoff game. Still would rather watch that than Daniel Jones and Joe Judge. Get the hell out of here, Giants. Get the hell out of here.
It's funny you bring that up, because we're going to talk about a couple of games here real quick over the weekend. I mean, there were some interesting performances. The Raiders and Broncos were fun. I think we both called that was specifically an over game where they scored 30 points in the fourth quarter alone. A lot of fireworks in that one. But the games that we talked about that just made sense, right? And look, I had to pick you up a little bit, Kyle. I know the week before you had the Arizona lose. I said, I got Kyle's back. Like, we're going to lift this thing up so we don't embarrass ourselves here on the show, and said, we're going to go Packers in our Play of the Week collaboration with Lee Martin here at Sportsbook Review. But we were on the same page. Sometimes you break games down, specifically in Week 17. It was a referendum game on Mitchell Trubisky, which I think the worst case scenario for Bears actual true fans happened, because the Bears got into the playoffs, but they got absolutely annihilated. And now you're going to let your enablers, talking about Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace as the GM and the head coach of the Bears, say, you can't get rid of us or the quarterback, man. We made the playoffs. Okay. How did you really make the playoffs? And now you get the New Orleans Saints. But just going back to that game, the simple caps, which we're going to talk about the 6 games this weekend, sometimes I think we get over our heads and over our skis, because this line opened up at like 6, 5.5, crashed down to 4, even 3.5. And I'm saying, Kyle, when I looked on Sunday, and they don't always work out this way, but I got Aaron Rodgers playing the best he's ever played, a top 5 quarterback, if not even higher all time, versus Mitchell Trubisky in a game that the Packers needed. I know some people were liking the Bears and they're at home and they're going to finally step up and they were playing well. But sometimes, I know we always talk about numbers and stuff, but just simplify it. I got Aaron Rodgers, you got Mitchell Trubisky, and I got to win by 5 points. Stop the madness.
Yeah, exactly. I think we both said that was probably our favorite play of the day. Of course, the Vikings let us down and couldn't cover against Detroit. So I'm so glad we're not talking about that piece of crap Vikings team. I hate the Vikings and the Patriots, man, gave me fits all year long. So I'm glad they're out. But yeah, we do, and I'm certainly guilty of this too. You start overthinking things, you commit to things, and you're like, oh, I saw this stat. I rewatch a game, I see this, I see that. Sometimes you got to keep it simple, stupid, right? We say it all the time. Rodgers versus Trubisky, and you're right. What a disaster now for the Bears, because they're going to bring these guys back. Mitchell Trubisky is probably going to make way more money than he should have ever deserved. Next year, they'll be 1-4 after week 5. Trubisky will have 12 interceptions through 5 weeks, and they'll be wondering, why the hell did we give this guy $90 million? Yeah, if you're a Bears fan, sure, maybe it's neat that you made the playoffs, but you have absolutely no shot of beating any of these teams. Maybe if you were playing Washington, that would be an interesting game to watch. And God, talk about the over-under there. You'd probably see 20 total points in the entire damn game. But, disaster for the Bears, and now you're stuck with Matt Nagy, who I kind of think's a bonehead coach, and Mitchell Trubisky. Good luck next year. I will be under on the Bears all year next year. I think it's going to be a disaster for them.
Yeah, Nuke Worker, Bears have been a fraud all year, including a 3-game streak. The one thing they do well, because, again, you have a really good defense and you have some talent on that team. So that's going to be enough to beat those really bad teams, which they had that little run on a couple-game win streak. But it was pretty clear that once they stepped back up in competition, it's not going to be so easy. Now, they did move the football in that game, but just didn't cash in when they needed to. So, their game plan was a little bit odd to me, because it was one of those that says to me, I don't have my quarterback of the future. Let's roll him out left and right and throw 5-yard passes all game and see if we can hang with Aaron Rodgers. Didn't work out so well. So we'll see in this weekend as it comes up. And again, we'll get to those games. Some slaughters across the board, but the games that really piqued my interest and said, you know what? This game was interesting was the one game, Kyle, that we talked about, 425. And it was, what were we going to get out of that Rams-Arizona game in Week 17? And you saw it right away. First drive of the game, down goes Frazier, as we like to say, where Kyler Murray left the football game after 4 plays, and Streveler came in. Strebler is a guy that, and again, sometimes I wish to me like I would have actually bet the game itself and took like Arizona, because that would have been a jersey for the wall. Strebler is not an NFL quarterback. He's not even a CFL quarterback anymore, an AAF quarterback, semi-pro, whatever you want. Watching that football game and saying this team has to win and this is their option at quarterback to try to get in was amazing. Now flip it over to the other side, John Walford. He starts the game and I'm going, holy cow. Like, this might be a game for Canton. This guy is horrendous. He can't play, but he settled in, found his legs. He wasn't tremendous, but he was able to move the football with his legs in a game where it was clear that you didn't have to do that much. You just didn't have to lose the game going up against Arizona. He was good enough to do that. Not sure about this week, but just that game itself where we laughed, like, how do you take a side in this game? And it turned out exactly the way we basically thought, too.
Yeah, just take the better defense, right? The Rams defense suffocated Arizona. Even, they tried to bring Kyler Murray back in. That wasn't going to work. You see it. If Kyler Murray can't use his legs, there's not a whole lot there. And then that defense was so bad. So even though, I know John Woliford's going to try to channel in his inner Jeff Hostetler and come in and replace Phil Simms. I mean, comparing Jared Goff to Phil Simms is kind of tragic, but and take this team. The Rams, the bottom line is the Rams are the best defense in the NFL. They're the number one rated defense. They have a terrific defense, and that's sort of how it played out. Arizona, a bad little stretch for Arizona. It's almost shameful that they didn't make the playoffs. The Wola and Woliford. I mean, you got to do it though. Woliford.
I love it. Yeah.
John Woliford, I know he hates it too, but I don't care because I hated watching him play. I mean, he did enough to win, but my God, that was a terrible, terrible game. It wasn't on Red Zone a whole lot, so I had to go back and rewatch it to kind of.
I don't know if anybody got in the red zone, and when they did get in the red zone, they fumble on the 1 yard. Like, I don't even know what some of these guys do, because looking at it from a team total perspective, you could have got the 17.5s that were out there, and primarily 18.5s, and later in the week 19.5s. It's so excruciating, Kyle, as a gambler, because I'm a team total guy. I didn't bet this game, but I'm looking at it going, they're going to get that. And you have the ball in the 1, and you just run it up to the goal line, and he's like, I'll just drop the football right here at the 1, no big deal. Oh, my God, that's excruciating.
It's so bad to watch. And the other excruciating one, going back to the Giants, how about Wayne Gallman just flat out trying to say,
God.
I mean, what the hell was that? He's just, honest to God, it reminds me of me at, almost 40 on the Thanksgiving Day field where I just get too tired to run and I drop the ball. I don't know what the hell is going on.
And then you just sit on it. You go for the recovery and just sit on the football.
Yeah, they sit on it, and they're the ones whining. We should be in the playoffs. All right, buddy. Yeah. But that Arizona Rams game, what a tragic display of football in that game. But the Rams defense is for real, and that's one thing to keep an eye on. If they can get to 20 points somehow, some way, and I know we'll get to that game, they've got a slight chance. Again, we'll get to that game later. But yeah, real interesting to watch. Wolford versus Strebler with everything on the line, and Wolford prevailed, I suppose. Woliford. I'm going to call him Woliford till the end of time.
I like that. You got to keep that. It's just like Kyler Murray. So those two guys struggling out there in the NFC. You're an NFC West guy. You're struggling with some of these names, which I do appreciate here. Let's get to some seasonal winners and losers. And, typically you look at it and say, the Buffalo Bills, they were winners. I get that. But there's 3 teams that actually stuck out to me in 2020 as actual winners. And it's kind of funny that the teams I went with. Number 1 was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Say, wait a second. They got Tom Brady. They didn't win the division. They made the playoffs. I actually thought it was a nice move for the Buccaneers with a brand new team to get through this season, go into the playoffs, and now it looks like they're going to get basically a bye week this week against the Washington football team. I put them as a winner this year just because of how much they had to lose. And for a while there, it looked like it was going backwards. I thought it was a nice way to turn around the season. Again, you didn't win the division, but you made it to the playoffs. You see what happens now in the new season. Team number 2 for me was the Kansas City Chiefs. Not because they're a good football team. They went 14-2, but didn't cover any lines. It's just the fact that they won the Super Bowl, didn't get full of themselves, and are still the best overall team in the NFL, I think, and heading into the playoffs. But the number 3 team, which was the biggest winner, who started the season off with a win, then did not win again because, again, it's better for your future. And nobody got upset. Jaguars, awesome, man. Getting Trevor Lawrence, look at that. They did the right thing by losing. Yes, they did. Those were my 3 winners this year. What were you looking at some winners, Kyle, for 2020?
You took my Jaguars. That was going to be my hot take, calling them the winners of the year, because I 100% agree. That is how you do it. Get it done. Get the franchise quarterback and move on. Number 1 for me has got to be the Green Bay Packers. Horrible offseason. They draft Jordan Love. They don't add any pieces around Aaron Rodgers, and the talk is, look, this organization stinks. Aaron Rodgers may be on the way out. He's pissed. All they do is they turn around their to me, sadly, and even though I don't think they can beat the AFC representative in the Super Bowl, they're the best team in the NFC right now. They get themselves home field advantage, which is huge for the Packers. They have a legitimate shot this year to get to the Super Bowl, and it's about time. With Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, you don't waste a year. So I thought that was a great year for them, sort of silencing some of that offseason noise. I like what they did there. Another team, look, I think they're frauds. I'm not a huge fan of this team, but it's huge for that fan base. The Cleveland Browns getting to the postseason. Did they look great doing it? No. Did they beat a lot of good teams doing it? No. But I can't think of a franchise that really needed to get to the playoffs more than the Cleveland Browns. Thought it was good for Baker Mayfield, sort of cemented himself as the quarterback. Stefanski does a great job in his first year. I thought it was a big win for the Cleveland Browns this year to make the playoffs, make your fan base a little bit happy after a long, long string of, just 2 years ago, they were 0-16, 3 years ago, they're 0-16. Now they're in the playoffs. So good on them. And then I'm right with you with Jacksonville. I mean, they just did the right thing. And we're going to get to losers of the year here in just a second. And it's going to be the team they were competing with for that number one overall pick. They got the number one overall pick. They secured that spot. They found themselves a really nice young running back to add to those receivers and put with Trevor Lawrence, with James Robinson. So good job by the Jaguars. Going 1-15 never looked so good. So I think the Jags did a great job.
Yeah, some interesting stuff as we always do live shows here. College football information coming out here. COVID issues at Ohio State as they look to postpone the national championship game for next Monday night. So keep an eye on that. We are an NFL show, but we are a football show here across our entire network as well. So that's interesting. Let's get to some losers in 2020 here. I got 3 of them here. Now, number 1 is going to be all-encompassing. Losers as a term, the NFC East. Embarrassing performance, embarrassing championship, winner in the Washington football team. Embarrassing game that the Eagles had to play on Thursday night in prime time. Why they NFL, which is great because the NFL flexed that. We all said, why would you flex that game into Sunday Night Football? Well, they got exactly what they deserve. But again, all news is good news, as they like to say in the press business here. And the NFL, they're talking about a meaningless game for the Eagles still here on Tuesday of Sunday night. So the NFL actually got exactly what they wanted, a dumb game, but we still talked about it days and days later that everybody's going against. Number 2. This team, and I think we started the season here, Kyle, talking on the show about the Detroit Lions being probably the single most insignificant franchise in NFL history over the past 50 years. They don't factor into anything. They don't get to the Super Bowl. They barely challenge for the division. The new stadium they built is just so cookie cutter boring with zero character. They always get the 12 o'clock game on Thanksgiving. You get slaughtered, so nobody really pays much attention to it. I thought they were a monster loser this year. Matt Patricia's a horrible head coach. I don't know how many times they can clear, but again, it all starts for some reason, if you own an NFC North team, the only prerequisite is that you actually walked around with brontosauruses and Tyrannosaurus rexes about how old you are. The 99-year-old Martha Ford Firestone says, all right, I'm going to step down this year. I'm going to hand it to my daughter, who he's like, oh, his daughter, 30 years old. No, she's like 75 years old as well. You get what you deserve. But in the NFL, when you print money, they can't force you out basically of ownership unless you're an overt racist. Who's to stop it? And why should Detroit improve at all over the next 50 years when they just print money? It doesn't matter. Loser.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're horrible losers. Yeah. Detroit was an absolute embarrassment this year. And you feel bad for Matthew Stafford because he's a gamer. He fights back. And now they're talking, look, we want to get rid of Stafford. What are you talking about? Your defense was historically bad. Your star wide receiver refused to play since like week 5. Your coaching staff was a joke. I mean, and we want to blame Matthew Stafford, the only semblance of a professional you have on your team. Get the hell out of here. That whole Lions organization are losers. But I mean, I got to start right here with the Jets. Now, I have enjoyed the Jets' pain the last few weeks. Of course, they let me down in week 17. But how could you possibly win those games and cost yourself the number 1 overall pick, gift wrap Trevor Lawrence to the Jaguars because you want to prove a point? I don't know if Adam Gase in some delusional fantasy world thought he was going to keep his job or save face or someone would ever hire him again to be their head coach. But what an absolutely stupid turn of events to win those games and cost yourself the number 1 overall pick. The franchise continues to be an embarrassment. The Jets, they'll be losers forever. The butt fumble Jets, they'll always be remembered as. Joe Namath isn't coming around the corner now. Now you got to hope what Justin Fields is something in the NFL. Jets, massive losers. Another one, I want to stick to the NFC North. The Minnesota Vikings, like that team came in, they have all the weapons in the world, two great wide receivers, a great running back. They say, you know what, our defense looked old last year. Let's bring in these young guys on defense. We're going to be a better defense. No, you weren't. Your defense was absolutely god-awful. Your quarterback continues to turn the ball over in meaningful games. I don't know how you can trust Kirk Cousins moving forward. I mean, he's great against, crappy teams. He can throw the ball all over the place against the Lions. But when the chips are on the table, Kirk Cousins turns the ball over too much. That defense was dreadful. Coming into this year, they were supposed to compete for the division title, and they've basically, I know they got to 5-6, 6-6, and then absolutely fell apart when it mattered most. I think the Vikings were massive, massive losers this year. And, one other team, we got beset by injuries. We fought hard, but hey, and this happens to NFC teams who lose in the Super Bowl, but, rough year for the 49ers, high expectations coming in, tons of injuries. Jimmy Garoppolo, a lot of questions about his future in San Francisco. Tough year for the 49ers, pretty disappointing. I know it was caused by injuries, but you got to say when you finish, six games lower than your projected win total at the start of the year, it was a bad year for you.
No, it definitely is, and it's a shame too because your windows are so short in the NFL where you were lining up for an extreme run over the next couple of years, and you lose a lot. And there's no, hey, you got Bosa coming back, all right, but it was a devastating injury. Dee Ford looks like he might not never play again. You're talking about one of the elite defenses and also offenses in the NFL where barely anybody made it to the starting gate. My last loser before we move on, and this team I think got it wrong the entire season. From, some teams gain in bad situations, the Jets, the Jaguars, and hell, even the Eagles. Hey, they've got a top 6 pick. We need help. We're going to get it here. The team that didn't help themselves at all and was a completely wasted year for the franchise overall and probably set them back, Kyle, New England Patriots. Yep. New England Patriots. Nobody developed at wide receiver. You have a couple, decent running backs. Your defense now gets older. You're probably going to lose your marquee corner that you had the last 5 years, who also goes down with a devastating injury. You try to figure some things out on offense with a quarterback. Cam Newton didn't even run the offense so these kids could even get acclimated to what a real, NFL passing game looks at. They were a monster loser, and they won enough games where it's not like, hey, the Patriots tanked. Just like a couple years ago when Tony Romo broke his back, you actually ended up finding a quarterback in Dak Prescott, but also you got Zeke Elliott in that draft, and you come back with a healthy football team, and bam, you're on your way. They had a nothing year that hurt their franchise. So when they go into the offseason, yeah, they got money, but you have no quarterback, and you're not high enough unless you trade massive amounts of draft picks to move up to take a guy who will be a rookie. I thought they lost big time here, Kyle, in 2020.
Oh, I agree. And the Patriots, God, they were the absolute bane of my existence this year. I could not get that team right to save my life. They had that early game against Seattle where they lost, and it looked like, oh, Cam's starting to get it. Maybe this offense can move, and they were sort of in that playoff hunt. But God, that was an absolutely embarrassing offense to watch. Like, if you want pain, just re-watch any Patriots game. It was Mark, or the dude mentions that in the chat box. I loved watching New England lose. It's amazing what happens when you can't get away with cheating. No one's allowed in the stadium, so you can't hide the guy at the top of the stadium and cheat your way to a victory. Can't stand Bill Belichick. I cannot stand that organization. I was happy to watch them lose all year, but you're right. What an absolute joke. And if they even slightly consider bringing back Cam Newton next year, they deserve every bit that's coming to them because that franchise is trending down. I think it's a long time before you see the Patriots back in the playoffs.
Yeah, I did get a kick out of Cam Newton said he's not going to wait as long this year to sign a contract in the NFL. Well, there's got to be two to that. You don't own your own team, Cam, so you can't sign yourself. Somebody's going to have to sign you, and I don't know who's rushing the minute free agency is out. They're like, you know what? We got to lock up Cam Newton and go make a run. Like, are the Colts next year, if they move on from Phillip Rivers, like, what's going to help our passing game? Cam Newton will be perfect in this offense. Don't think that's going to be possible here. But let's start getting to some of these games before we get too late in the show. And again, wild card weekend here. How to approach betting super wild card weekend, which they had the super in there because you have a couple extra football games, and they look at playoff futures. To me, myself, when you try to set up the weekend on itself, matchups make sense. These are all primarily good football teams. You can say, well, maybe Chicago's not that good, but they do got talent. They got a defense. They can get after the quarterback. I get it. The one team, Washington, as Kyle says, and he's correct, the front four is awesome. They're all first-round draft picks. They get after the quarterback. It's a lot of fun to watch. But outside of that, they're an embarrassment as an organization overall. They don't have a team name. Their owner sexual harasses everybody. They get left in. Like, the coach had to basically say, I'm not apologizing for winning that game, because theoretically a real football team puts the screws to the Eagles and pounds them 35-3 on Sunday night, and everybody laughs and we move on. The only reason why the Eagles are in hot water because they're saying, like, we're giving this game away, and Washington stinks so bad they can't do anything about it. Now, you're not playing the Philadelphia Eagles this weekend. You're playing an elite offensive line, a running game, a quarterback that's won 6 rings, a wide receiving core that is dominant, and a pass rush that's going to be coming after a guy with what they like to call Civil War leg in the backfield, Alex Smith. But when I say that, it's the same prognosis we talk about, Kyle, right? Because we're going to look at games this weekend, and we'll get the breakdown in just a momentarily. But look at the quarterback situation. Josh Allen is an MVP level in cold weather going up against Phillip Rivers. Probably say Josh Allen absolutely the better quarterback. Seattle versus the Rams. A guy with maybe Steve DeBerg thumb is going to play this weekend. If anybody's old enough to date themselves, Steve DeBerg basically played with his finger a banana on it in one of those games. That's what Jared Goff's going to have to do. But on the other side, you got Russell Wilson. Tom Brady, who is old, Alex Smith can't move, and they're talking about saying he's been so bad we might go to Taylor Heineke to start this game. Obviously, you have an advantage at quarterback. Then we move on to Sunday. One of the games that might be a stalemate overall, just in athletic ability and the way these two guys are producing, is Lamar Jackson and Ryan Tannehill. But let's move it down the list again. Drew Brees versus Mitchell Trubisky. Drew Brees isn't everything, but he looked really good last week, moving that football up down the field with not a lot of weapons. And then Baker Mayfield, we know he can get hot, but also you're going up against a Hall of Fame caliber rested quarterback in Pittsburgh. Just the prognosis this weekend. Do we make it too much, or should we say, you know what, better quarterback, give it to me, playoffs?
Yeah, better quarterback, give it to me, playoffs. And another thing, we're already seeing COVID rear its head. So again, you see a line you think is low or you think is high. I'm really waiting until as close to kickoff as I can get, because we simply don't know what is going to happen. All it takes is one damn test. And next thing you know, it's, whoever the damn backup is for Seattle now. Geno Smith is quarterbacking Seattle versus John Wolford. You just don't know. So it's a different year than keep treating it the same way. There's a lot of unknowns. I wouldn't, get ahead of myself betting some of these things. Of course, you always want to find good adjusted line value. Like, we could have gotten great value if you're a Pittsburgh backer yesterday. The line was 2 points lower than you find out about COVID today. Yep. So it can work both ways, but you are taking a risk if you jump into stuff too early, because the NFL's already said we're not going to reschedule these games for competitive reasons. So a lot of things here I wouldn't jump. I know it's exciting. It's the playoffs. We all want to bet it. Wild card weekends, one of the weeks, we got more games, so there's more opportunity to make money. But again, I would be smart. Wait till we see everything that's going to happen. Make sure everyone's going to play. What if it ends up being Matt Barkley versus Phillip Rivers? You just don't know. Yeah. So jumping in on Buffalo 6.5 right now, does it look okay? Sure. But if it's Matt Barkley, are you going to feel really dumb holding the bag, as Donnie likes to say, with Matt Barkley at 6.5? So I think, of course, you always want the better quarterback in playoff games. But, I still want to wait and see what these teams are going to look like heading into the game.
Yeah, and we take a look also, I guess the one matchup, because you'll see it next week, which is usually has two teams coming back off the bye. The rest heading into the playoffs is such a key component. The only team that really rested this weekend with guys, Kyle, out of all these teams was the Pittsburgh Steelers, actually able to, get a couple of their stars away, get rest, and now come back. And also compounded now with Cleveland, because you might have to wait until game time with Cleveland. We know, Joel Bitonio is going to be out. That's a big loss at guard, but it's a guard. You can overcome that position. And Kadarius Hodge at wide receiver. Okay, we're expecting Denzel Ward back. And the head coach isn't going to coach the game, but he's going to be able to put in the game plan all during the week. And you have a new look, an offensive coordinator. So not all bad stuff. But the issue is now, Kyle, if there's an outbreak, just because you found out today, what happens if we look tomorrow and you say, oh, look at the running backs. Kareem Hunt's going to be out, and so is Nick Chubb. And, Baker Mayfield was close. He's going to be out too. That could be a devastating situation to watch. So even if, like me, where I'm like, ooh, now it's up to 6.5, and their team total's getting lower, even though you want to bet that game now, there's going to be more pain on the way for the Browns, because I doubt, and it's similar, Kyle, could get, remember the Baltimore Ravens game where every day somebody was getting knocked out? This, when you have an outbreak, does not just go away and say, hey, that's the last of it with Bitonio and Kadarius Hodge. Somebody else is going to get it throughout the week. They can't practice. This is the playoffs. That's one of those games with a big impact here, Kyle.
Yeah, a huge impact, and it's the last game of the weekend as well. So there's just a lot of parts there. It's going to be really tough to bet the Cleveland side. I know a lot of people want. I wouldn't have anyways. You kind of go back and see when these teams are full strength. I wasn't really impressed by Cleveland last week against the backups. Why would I be? And then you look at that first game much earlier in the year. Pittsburgh absolutely stomped the snot out of Cleveland. But yeah, now now you've got your special teams coach as your head coach. Can't practice during the week. There's definitely going to be more players, right? I'll be shocked if these are the last positive tests on that team. So we just don't know what we're going to see out of Cleveland. Makes it very, very difficult. It sucks. We knew this was going to happen. It's unfortunate it's happening during the playoffs. Let's hope this is the only game affected by it. But again, it's running rampant everywhere. And, whether you think it's dangerous or not, perception's reality, and the NFL has its protocol. So one bad test, and the whole shape of the weekend could change with just a couple of tests. So it's something to keep an eye on heading into the weekend for sure.
Yep. Also, real quickly, taking a look at, obviously, as we head into the playoffs, you get another chance to bet. Obviously, you can do point spreads. And if you're a DFS guy, you got slates on Saturday and Sunday. But NFL futures are always fun to look at once the season actually ends. The Kansas City Chiefs plus 200. Again, I'm just looking at these are going to change between the 220s, 240s, depending on what book you have. But just looking at a, just generic book here, Kansas City plus 200. You have the Green Bay Packers plus 450, the Saints at 750, and the Bills at 750, which goes to show you, say, wait a second, Kansas City's plus 200, the Bills are 750. That's such a big number this year, but that doesn't look like it should be. But the reason is last year, Kyle, both of these teams get the bye. Both of these teams will play the same amount of games in the playoffs. That's not the case anymore. Kansas City is resting. Buffalo's going to get a pretty good test out of Indianapolis. So then whilst they're sitting back and watching, they got to win 3 games being Buffalo to get to where they want to go. And you only need 2 games, just like in the past, for Kansas City. That's the reason. I've had a couple of people ask questions like, well, why would they be 750? I think they can hang with them. So do I. But you're playing the extra game against a playoff team. It's not the Buffalo Bills playing, again, the Miami Dolphins this weekend and beating them by 40. I doubt that's going to happen against the Colts. They'll be in for it. But looking at some of these numbers, like the long shots, Seattle Seahawks 13-1, Steelers 22-1, Tennessee 28-1, and again the Colts 40-1. Looking at some of these numbers, any long shots that you would want to take a look at? It's just one of those things like, I don't know if I can go wrong if I put, some money on Green Bay because you think they're going to come out of the NFC if you do, and then taking a flyer on maybe the Bills at 750, hoping that they can knock off the Chiefs because I think they're going to give them hell in that game.
Yeah, I actually made it a little less risky and just took NFC and AFC champions. So I look at the NFC, you get the Seahawks at plus 500. Look, the Seahawks defense since week 9 is number 3 in defensive scoring in the NFL. Their defense has really come around. And if you look at somebody who could go into Lambeau and give the Packers trouble, it's the Seahawks defense playing better and a hyped up Russell Wilson. Aaron Rodgers has had his problems with the Seahawks before. I think Russell Wilson, you take the Seahawks you said to win the Super Bowl. If they get to the Super Bowl and play the Chiefs, you got Wilson and Mahomes. That could be a really interesting game. A lot of points there. I think the Seahawks are a team you take a long shot at. I like the to win the NFC Championship at plus 500. And on the AFC side, even though this team is a historically bad defense, and we'll go over more of this defense when we get to the game, but I look at an offense that can score on anyone, a running game that can run on anyone. I look at the Titans at plus 1,600. Now, look, are they going to have to score 50 to beat Kansas City or Buffalo? Absolutely. Of course they are, because their defense can't stop anybody, but they're certainly capable of it. If I'm looking for talent and teams that can score points and maybe win some games, outside of the Chiefs and the Packers and the Bills, which I think would be the 3 teams you'd want to focus on, I think the Titans are plus 1,600 to win the AFC Championship. I could take a little shot on that as well.
Yeah, I had a free bet at a sports book for $100 on a team future before the season started. I actually went with the Buffalo Bills at 28-1 on that future. Beautiful. So it looks good. It was one of those teams that we all thought would be really good this year, but one of those were like, oh man, I thought they would be good. They ended up stinking. No, they're actually even better than I thought they would be. And then I have a small wager that started out on the Kansas City Chiefs before the season at a little bit lower dollar figure, but that's the one I'm rooting for. And I can see both of those guys getting to the AFC Championship here. But let's talk about these 6 games this weekend and have a little bit of fun here. Now, the prognosis of the show, what we'd like to do on Tuesdays is talk these games through. Not really, I got to take them early in the week. I fire it away because we're going to have a Thursday show, which we're going to spend even more time and not recap, from week 17 of the season and really hit these games. And then again on Saturday, we're going to have a nice show just talking about those 3 games on Saturday. Then once again on Sunday, we're going to have a pregame show talking about the 3 on Sunday. So looking at it overall, love the fact the AFC card to me is fantastic. Kyle and I were both talking before the show. You got bangers every game. It's going to be a lot of fun. Some, in the NFC, but it's nice that they started us off with a good treat, 141, 142 with the Colts and the Buffalo Bills. Line opens up around that 6 range, goes to 7, gets back to 6.5. Now, the one thing is, me and Kyle are big weather guys this weekend. The chill is in the air, but the cold is not really going to be an issue, I don't think. There's not much wind. So, it's going to be 25 degrees, and nobody likes it. We'd rather have 55, 65 degrees. So does everybody else. But if a dome team's going outdoors, it's going to be cold. There's not going to be any precipitation, no snow, no rain, and 5-mile-an-hour winds in Buffalo, which is about as good as you can ask for. But when I look at this game, I saw the way Buffalo went into a game where we didn't know how they would come out. We didn't know how long they would play, maybe show up for a little bit and then duck out at halftime. They annihilated the Dolphins. This team means business. They're explosive on offense. Their defense rested a couple players. Can we really think, because I love Frank Reich. I do. I love the Colts. I love the way their organization is built. And I say it each and every week. You get the truest effort to me out of the Indianapolis Colts. You're not going to lay your money down many times with the Colts, like, I can't even believe I did that. This team is just awful. They always give you an honest effort. But I can't stop this hot hand. Buffalo is a hot knife through butter. And why should it stop this weekend?
Yep, absolutely. And real quick, let me take you to school here in the chat box here, Ninja. The Seahawks, since week 9, top 10 in defensive efficiency, 3rd in defensive scoring, held the Cardinals, who were humming at that time with Kyler Murray, to 21 points. Yeah, they've been very good lately. So I appreciate commenting there, but you got to do a little bit more research before you come that strong in the chat box. Now let's get to this game. So this is my favorite game of the weekend. I cannot wait to watch this game. I think these two, it's a shame for me because these are two teams in the AFC that I root for. I love Phillip Rivers, love Josh Allen. And you're right, Buffalo is humming on offense. And, one of the misconceptions about the Colts is, hey, well, they have one of the better defenses in the league. And that was true through about the first 7 or 8 weeks of the year. But if you look since week 9, they are bottom 6 in defensive efficiency, bottom 5 in overall defense. They can't stop anybody. Then you flip it to the other side and you say, Buffalo, the 3rd worst rushing defense in the league. They have one really good corner in Tre'Davious White. These are 2 beatable defenses. So just looking early in the week, you kind of revert back to last year. How is Buffalo going to react in their first playoff game since that collapse against the Texans last year? Remember, they were up by 16 in the 4th quarter. Then they have one of the more epic collapses you're ever going to see and end up losing that game in overtime to the Texans. How does that stick in their mind? Does that play into what happens this year? One, obviously, the biggest addition to this team is Stephon Diggs. Xavier Rhodes, did he have a bounce back year? Sure. Is he going to be able to keep up with his former teammate from Minnesota? I don't think so. That Colts defense has really regressed. I think both teams put up points. I think this game's a lot of fun to watch. Earlier in the week, I do think Buffalo probably wins this by a touchdown, but I'm a little bit nervous laying that many points on the Colts. Colts are going to give you an honest effort, but I do like the over 51. I know the game's going to be cold, but again, sunny, no wind. It's not Josh Allen's first game in cold weather. It's not Phillip Rivers' first game in cold weather. I like points to be scored in this game, but right now I will take Buffalo by a touchdown.
Yeah, it's funny that you look at it, too, because if you're asking Buffalo, like, hey, man, we're the 2 seed, we're going to play our first playoff game. I mean, usually I can't say a chump. Like, wouldn't you rather have like the Miami Dolphins type team and just be like, we're going to go out here, play our game. We haven't been to, we've been to the playoffs last year, but we're trying to sink our teeth in this one, get a victory and move on and finally win since the first time it seems like eons in a playoff game. And end up getting the Indianapolis Colts and Frank Reich right out of the gate. It's going to be a fun one to watch. Looking at the chat box, MHP, Jay Taylor must run wild again. You are correct, because I don't know if Phillip Rivers, and again, what really helps him, one guy doesn't matter if it's 50-mile-an-hour winds because he has a howitzer on his hand. That's not the case with Phillip Rivers. So light winds will help Phillip Rivers. Doesn't move around all that well. But this game early in the week comes down to me. It's a nice, shiny toy to say, whoa, I'm going to get the Colts around 7. It's playoff football. Anything can happen. But when you pop the tape in on this Buffalo offense for the past month and a half, it's scorched earth. You're praying that somebody drops a football so like the offense just stalls out. They're that dynamic, and their quarterback is playing at that high level early in the week. That's the way we're lean. Let's keep moving here. 143, 144. The big question mark early in the week which is why we get a crack on Thursday and also Saturday to cap this game. Who's going to be a quarterback for the Rams? To be honest with you, the Rams defense has been sensational, and they give you a chance each and every time out. But I don't know if you can get away against a playoff caliber team as the Seattle Seahawks are with a quarterback that runs around. And yes, he does look a little like Doug Flutie. He's a lot faster than you would think of a quarterback that's just going to, hey, if you never saw the guy, damn. This guy looks like he got some wheels, and he did have wheels and did enough to win the game last week versus a completely inept Arizona offense. But I don't know if you can step into playoff football on the road and still have that young kid back there now that you see what he wants to do on tape. You see his tendencies. Oh, he does run a little bit. Let's make sure we prepare for this. But even if you get Jared Goff, the dude has 3 screws, not in just his offhand, in his throwing hand. Cooper Kupp's going to come back after practicing. Love that defense. But the simple notion for me early in the week, it's a 4-point number. I don't even like the way Seattle's playing on offense one bit. Jamal Adams might be a game-time decision and might sit it out. But it comes down to me. I got Russell Wilson on one side and John Wofford on the other. Come on now.
I mean, it seems a little bit too easy, right? And really what this game's going to come down to, when you watch the 2 games they played this year, 39 points in the first one, 29 points in the second one. Rams win 1, Seahawks win 1. The real difference is, will Russell Wilson turn the football over? Normally, that's not a question, but this year, Russell Wilson turned the ball over more than he ever has in his career. That first game, a fumble, a couple of interceptions, the Rams win. Second game, turnover-free football. If he doesn't turn the ball over, the Rams have no shot at winning this game. I don't care if it's Jared Goff with one. Do we trust Jared Goff even when he's fully healthy? We don't trust him.
Correct.
Now we're supposed to take him with, half a thumb. I'll be really surprised if he plays. It looks like a really difficult path to get there. So it's going to be the John Wofford show. He's going to have to channel, like I said, his inner Joff Hostetler, take him there. I don't see it happening. And I like, it's 3.5 or 4. That's about where you like Russell Wilson. You don't like it when it gets any higher than that because they always find a way to play down to their competition. The Rams defense is going to keep it in it, probably keep the score down. 42.5 is a low number, but if you're getting Wolford in this game, I would probably take the under. God, I might even with the Goff anyways. But yeah, you got to take Seattle. I like the bet online number. They're sitting at 3.5, mostly 4s across the board, but that 3.5 makes me feel a lot better. But you got to take Seattle here. Wilson versus Wolford. It's just, there's nothing else to say. Seattle should win this game. It's too bad because I have a future beginning the year on the Rams, as we know. Flash did as well. Just doesn't seem like it's going to happen for that offense. I got to take the Seahawks.
Yeah, because when you look, because the Rams are getting some help back. Possibly, Whitworth going to come back and play left tackle, which would be a major upgrade. You saw last week, I was surprised Cam Akers actually came back and got a majority of the workload. Didn't look as, bursty or springy, as we'd like to say, is what he was in the past. But another week to try to get healthy again. So Cooper Kupp coming back at wide receiver, that should help. But it's just, you need to have a playoff caliber guy. Russell Wilson's been there and done that. And I don't even like what Seattle's doing over the past 4 to 5 weeks on offense. And even when watching Russell Wilson, he doesn't look like he has those young, fresh legs that he once did even like a year and a half ago at this point, because eventually running for your life, your entire career catches up. But I don't want to outsmart myself and be like, Rams defense is really good. They can do this or that. McVay's a great play caller. And then I look at the game and be like, dude, I took John Wolford instead of taking, Russell Wilson. So the way it is. Exactly. Night game, I don't know why they put this in the night game. We saw how embarrassing Washington was on Sunday night. It's not going to get any better. It's so bad in Washington that they're talking about putting in Tyler Heineke or, having a rotation in. Alex Smith is not an NFL quarterback anymore. I love the fact he wins comeback player of the year. Wonderful guy. What an inspiration, but a horrendous quarterback specifically in 2020. And you could say, because the chat box is like, oh, he won the division and they're winning games. And no, it's not about that. They're not winning games because he's their quarterback. They're hanging around and getting lucky because he's their quarterback. The defense has done the majority of the damage, and they play in the NFC East. I sent out a tweet today. His passer rating in the 70s, which out of qualified quarterbacks, there's 35. That's 31st in the NFL. And if you want to take a look again at the optics of the situation, right? Everybody will come in here and say Carson Wentz was horrendous this year. When you look at the QBR stats between Carson Wentz and Alex Smith, it makes it look as if Carson Wentz is Aaron Rodgers-like this year as compared to what Alex Smith has been doing. One of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. We can't state this enough. We like him. Nice guy. Unbelievably that he came back. this team is better if Tyler Heineke's on the field on Saturday night. That's where I'm at.
You're probably right about that. And then when I look at this game overall, right, I look at Washington. The last time they lost a game by more than 8 points was all the way back on October 11th against the Rams when they were humming. Some teams they've either beaten or lost close to who are good teams here. We're talking about the Steelers, the 49ers they beat by 8. The Seahawks, they lose by 5. The Eagles, and again, these aren't great teams, but again, they're not a team that gets blown out because that defense is so good. Then you flip it over to the other side, Tampa Bay. They only had one win this year against a playoff team. That was that blowout win over Green Bay at home in Tampa. All 5 of their losses came against playoff teams. When they played tough defenses, the Rams, the Bears, etc., they really struggled. We know this has been the formula how to beat Tom Brady from the beginning. Get a pass rush with 4 pass rushers, pressure him up the middle, and force him to throw when you have extra defensive backs back there. Now you take into account Devin White, their speed linebacker, probably not going to be there for the game. Mike Evans looks really, really iffy. So should Tampa Bay win this? Yes. Were we joking all week that this is sort of a first-round bye? Absolutely. But I don't know how explosive Tampa Bay is going to be against this Washington defense. I love the under 45 here. I do not see a ton of points scored in this game. And I actually think I'm going to go a little contrarian here. I think Washington covers the spread at home. I do not think this is a blowout because I don't think Brady can dominate this defense. I mean, we watched that Thursday night game against the Bears, 20-19. That was absolutely god-awful. If we had Washington playing the Bears, that'd be a 1-point line. That'd be, 1.5, 2. I think this game is closer than people think. I think Tampa Bay wins, sure. But I am going to say that Washington covers this week. Low-scoring game. My favorite bet on this game is the under 45.
Yeah, they're going to need defensive scores. Washington is going to need at least a defensive touchdown to stay in this game. And we always have the fun drinking game. Every time Alex Smith throws a 1-yard pass on 3rd and 10 or more, take a sip of vodka. You will be hammered by late first quarter. So that's always something fun to keep an eye on. Good stuff here coming out of the chat box. But that is the Saturday night game. And I don't know why they put Washington and Tampa Bay should have actually been the 1 o'clock game. And they should have moved that Indianapolis-Buffalo game into the night spot. I don't even I've been an NFC East guy my whole life. Obviously, the Eagles are my squad. I've met maybe one Redskin fan my entire life here in the Northeast. I see tons of Cowboy fans, Giants fans, obviously Eagle fans. I don't know who is a Washington fan at this point. This is going back 20 years, and how they got the night game is beyond me. People, it's Tom Brady, but you got to have a counterpart in that game. We don't want to see 3 yards in a cloud of dust and 1-yard passes. But wait, we're going to cap it. We're going to have fun with it. It is a lot of points in a playoff game. It would mean a lot more if there were 80,000 at FedEx Field cheering against the Buccaneers, but it's going to be a silent environment basically, and Tom Brady to me should be able to operate. But also keep in mind, Mike Evans out at practice today, but listed as a non-participant. The things that we talk about Sunday where he needed a certain amount of yards to get his 1,000 yards, he got it, stayed in the game, and still hurt his knee on top of it. So something to keep an eye on as the week goes. Let's go on and move to Sunday NFL action. 3 games, 1 o'clock right off. Just an absolute – Sunday is fantastic, man. A banger right off the bat. Yeah. Baltimore and Tennessee, and I look at this game early, and I'm not all the way into my numbers and what I want. But when you look at the optics of it, Tennessee's offense, I don't know if anybody stops it anywhere. But at least Baltimore now getting healthy on defense, a semblance of defense and competent defense. You know who doesn't have a competent defense no matter who's out there? That's the Tennessee Titans. But when I look at this game, opens up at 3.5. Now we're seeing 3s come into the picture across the board. If there's one game that I can sit back and say, honestly, Kyle, I don't need a wager on this game because it could go any way possible here. It's this game right here at 1 o'clock.
Yep, you've got all these revenge narratives. Tennessee embarrassed Baltimore last year. They won the game earlier this year. Important to remember in that game, we covered that game. They were without both Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams. Baltimore got up in that game, and then Tennessee came back with that running. Now they're healthy up front. Here's the thing. You're
34, right, by the way, also, Kyle, 34 carries for the big man last week. So
that's right. Exactly. But he kind of went on this run last year too, if you remember in the playoffs. He was getting a ton of carries going in. He get that 2,000-yard marker. Look, the Tennessee offense can score on anybody, but the problem is this defense isn't just bad. They are historically bad. If they didn't get, this is according to Dan Graziano on ESPN, if they did not get those 4 sacks against the Texans last week, which everyone gets sacks on Deshaun Watson, especially if you lose your best offensive lineman, Laramie Tunsil, for the game, they would have had the fewest sacks ever for a playoff team since the merger in 1970. If you look since 2006, of the 184 teams who have made the playoffs since 2006, The Tennessee Titans defensive efficiency ranks 183rd. Only the 2006 Chargers had a worse defense going into the playoffs than this team does. It is historically bad. They're the only team since the merger to allow over 50% to make the playoffs and allow over 50% third down conversions. The defense cannot get off the field. Now, if the Titans get a lead, we know the story. Can Lamar Jackson throw them back into this game? And that's the real question. If Tennessee gets up 10-0, it's over. Tennessee is going to win this game. They will run away from Baltimore. The first drive of the game, first couple of drives, that first quarter, normally you say, let's see what happens in the fourth quarter. The first quarter of this game is immensely important if you're a Ravens backer. You're right. I have absolutely no way of knowing who's going to win this game. Both of these teams could beat any team in the league. Both of them could. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I do like the over 54, 55. I think there's a ton of points in this game. No chance that Tennessee stops Baltimore's offense, so Tennessee's going to have to score. The team that scores first, in my opinion, wins this game. If Tennessee gets out to that early lead, they win. Go the other way if Baltimore does. I think they can win as well because that Tennessee defense falls apart.
You know, it's wild in that game, too. Like, the game is in Tennessee, and you're going to have temperatures in the mid to low 30s. But, again, no weather conditions to worry about outside of just it being cold. The wind and the rain is what you want to look at, and that's not going to take place here. Well, I always look at Tennessee. Like, if you have an offensive prototype where it says, I don't know how you stop this football team, it's them. A big, strong, athletic quarterback, a running back that's just, straight out of a magazine or some science fiction novel, and you have two wide receivers that could be, Mr. Olympia's lifting wise. It's a crazy, crazy look. And they're going to be tough to stop. But I'm watching this Baltimore team, and you look at the offense and say, okay, J.K. Dobbins looks like an absolute superstar. Lamar Jackson's got his wheels back after being banged up a little bit in the season. Who stops who? I don't know. But it is a playoff game. At 55 points, you would figure somebody somewhere, some way would get a little bit conservative. But these two teams show, Kyle, they go toe-to-toe. Let's keep moving here. 149-150, highest line of the week, and deservedly so. The New Orleans Saints expecting to get back Alvin Kamara, but Kyle, he's not even going to practice all week. He's going to show up at the facility Sunday morning, get his rapid test, and take the field. We're also anticipating back possibly Michael Thomas back off IR from that ankle sprain, rested and ready. This is a really good offense for New Orleans when it's put back together, and I keep on getting back to Taysom Hill getting a majority of the snaps midway through the season. That only helps as they move along. They have a really good offensive line and defensive line. That's where you win in the trenches. Mitchell Trubisky, I don't think can throw you to victory. It's not in his DNA to go in and beat the New Orleans Saints. Now, people, hey, should the game earlier? 26-23, overtime was a close game. I understand that. You also have to remember there were no wide receivers in that game for the New Orleans Saints. Emmanuel Sanders was out, so was Michael Thomas. And you said, hey, they still went on the road and won. That's a great coaching staff. So if I have the coaching staff advantage and the talent advantage, and I'm at home in the Dome, going to be hard to go against it. But again, Kyle, that's a 10-point line here.
Yeah, that's the thing. A 10-point line. And we saw these teams play earlier in the year, 26-23, went to overtime. Breeze was in that game. It was also Nick Foles quarterbacking. And I know the Bears went on a nice little, I guess you want to call it a nice little run to get back in the playoff. Look at the teams who they were beating. I mean, absolute travesty. They play one game where, it was win or get in, and they get stomped by the Packers. But man, am I taking a 10-point line in the playoffs? That's the real question I have for myself. You're right. The Saints, when you just look at their defense, they're a top 5 defense in defensive efficiency. They're good against the run. They're really good against the pass. So where is the weakness? I suppose it's in the slot there. And Allen Robinson does have some success against Lattimore and Jenkins. He plays pretty well. But just looking over, number 4 against the run, against the pass, they're still sitting here in the top, 8 or 9. It's going to be tough sledding for that Bears offense. And what a gift the NFL gives the Saints, huh? Like, oh, you need us to wait till Sunday so Alvin Kamara can come back? No problem. Yeah. We'll make up a little bit for bounty. Yeah. We'll put you on Sunday afternoon. We'll make Tampa Bay, Washington the Saturday night game. So Alvin Kamara and Sean Payton. Well, we'll see how much he can play without practicing all week. Yeah. You're benching it's a bad thing that your All-Pro running back doesn't have to take a beating at practice this week and is rested. What a horrible situation to come into. Michael Thomas looks like he's fully healthy. They're saying he's a lock to be in this game. Yeah. The Saints should roll here. Do I love that number? Not very much. That might be a case where I live bet it and hope maybe the Bears hit a big play on that first drive or get a field goal, just drop it to 6.5 or 7, then hit the number. But I expect the Saints here to win pretty easily. History
It's
not
got
on
a
the side.
31-20. It's got a 31-20 feel for me in that
It does.
respect. That's
Yeah,
really
I
what
think
it has.
that's right. I'm looking at that over 47. I think that seems about right. Saints at home in the playoffs. A few fans there. They should put up points. You got to like the Saints here. That number makes me a little bit nervous, but there's no way I'm betting Mitchell Trubisky on the road in the postseason. Not after what I saw last week either.
I don't like the Bears at all, but I got to tell you, one of my favorite players in the NFL is Montgomery, the running back for the Bears. I don't know how, like, if you would have said, like, here's $1 million, try to tackle him one-on-one, I would never be able to bring him down. I'm talking like even when I was playing football, in my late teens and early 20s. Amazing balance. It's one of those things where you just watch a football player that no matter if it's one-on-one, he's got an extra 5 yards in him. They're going to have to feed this kid. I mean, 25 to 30 touches in this game, run play action, and Allen Robinson is going to have to win some contested balls, which he does at quite a high clip. Last game of the weekend, we'll talk about Sunday Night Football, Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Looks like it might get ruined. They're not going to postpone this game unless Cleveland just really, Cleveland can actually get smart. If Cleveland was really devious, Kyle, they would say contract tracing, half our football team's out. And They say, well, we can't actually play this game. I guess the NFL is doing it from their headquarters on who's in, who's out. Coaches are in on it. We'll see who the running backs end up being, the offensive linemen. But I still don't understand what contact tracing actually works, because if you're telling me that the head coach who's around everybody, shouldn't the whole team actually be out? Or if an offensive line who you huddle with the entire practice and game, the center is not a close contact to the guard who has it? I don't know how they deal with it, but it is what it is. But this line on the move, 3.5s, 4.5s, 5.5s, 6s, even 6.5s as we're looking at here, because I think people are jumping in right now in the Steelers going, I don't think this is the end of the COVID crisis for Cleveland. And all I need is Baker Mayfield to actually be a close contact, and it's a wrap on Cleveland for the game. Or Nick Chubb in this game, it's a wrap. Yeah. You already lost Olivier Vernon last week to injury in that game that you had to win late in the fourth quarter. What happens if Myles Garrett ends up with it again? I don't know. Can he get it again? Who knows what the hell the details are? So
well, apparently you can. You look at the NBA. You look at Kevin Durant. He had COVID in May. Then he gets contract traced, and he's still testing for antibody. Again, I'm not a doctor or scientist, so I have absolutely no clue how that all works. But the NBA is making him sit out for a week, and he's already had it. So if Myles Garrett gets it, that would be the worst case scenario. So you look at the Steelers, right? If you're trying to take the Cleveland side, let's just assume they were all there. You're like, well, Pittsburgh can't run the ball. Their running backs stink. It's not necessarily just their running backs, who are slow and boring. James Conner is slower than my grandmother ever ran. It's tough to watch him run the ball. But you look at that Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. They're 6th from the bottom in block win rate on running plays. They're 5th from the bottom in block win rate on passing plays. So you look and go, well, the Steelers only gave up 13 sacks this year, so their offensive line must be great. That is not the case. Ben Roethlisberger gets rid of the ball in 2.3 seconds, faster than any quarterback in the last 20 years. His average yards per attempt is 6.3 yards per attempt. That's 32nd in the NFL. So they're compensating for this terrible offensive line. Flat out, the offensive line is not good by throwing these quick passes. What's the best way to beat a terrible offensive line than a guy like Myles Garrett? But you're right. Now, with COVID running through, Pittsburgh's defense going after Baker Mayfield. I do not trust Baker Mayfield under pressure. We've seen it several times with Baltimore this year. We've seen it with Pittsburgh. Absolutely blown out of the water. The defense is going to be good enough to stop that rushing offense, if you will, for the Cleveland Browns. I'm looking, they're ranked 11th, giving up about 4.3 yards per carry. I think they do just enough. The Cleveland defense you can't trust. Will Denzel Ward be there? Etc., coming off the COVID list, Kevin Johnson, etc. Too many weapons for Pittsburgh. They're at home. They're going to have a few fans in the stands. And now you talk about all this COVID situation not being able to practice. It's really hard to back the Cleveland Browns this week.
It is tough because it's banked on COVID. It's a shame that it's come up and it might be an issue coming into. We'll see who's going to be able to play. And again, still some of the fallout of who's going to get it. But I loved what the Cleveland Browns have done. Opposite like the Jets game, you had to take that out because they had no wide receivers. They looked decent against Pittsburgh, 192 yards on the ground, 166 in the air. But the previous couple games before, the Giants, Baltimore, Tennessee, they really ignited that offense. And I think they can do it again, but you're limited now. The fact of the matter is, this game to me comes down to not what Cleveland can do on offense, not what Cleveland can do on defense, Kyle. I saw one half of good football over the past month for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense.
You're right.
And they said, we're going to rest our quarterback. So those good vibes in the second half that you got versus the Indianapolis Colts, they all disappeared. Now you're going to have to reignite those for the playoffs. And I got to tell you, I can see a slow start from the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger in that first half, which may put this game in peril. I don't think they're just going to pick up where they left off in the second half, because what I thought I saw in those games where they played, against the Buffalo Bills and, down the stretch and the Washington Redskins and even going back to that Ravens game is, boy, this offense doesn't look that good. I don't know if they can flip the switch back on. I don't.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, their only good half is that comeback against the Colts. And other than that, they've been absolutely dreadful. You're absolutely right about that. But man, you look at how the recipe for beating Cleveland is a physical, aggressive defense. They have, even though Pittsburgh does have some weaknesses on the outside opposite Joe Hayden, they still have Minkah Fitzpatrick back there. There's not a lot of weapons for that Cleveland offense outside of their running backs. I mean, Jarvis Landry is not a number one receiver. Cardero Hodge is going to be out. Donovan Peoples-Jones got hurt in that last game. We'll see how healthy he's going to be. So now you're talking, Rashard Higgins and you're going to Njoku and Hooper, hopefully. I just don't see enough weapons. And look, no doubt about it, the Steelers offense has been terrible, but if they can get to 21, 28 points, I think it's going to be hard for Cleveland to move the ball. They're not going to be able to run down the throat of Pittsburgh. That's not going to happen. So Baker Mayfield's going to have to make plays. TJ Watt, if he takes over this game, it's going to be a long day for Cleveland. I liked when it opened at 4.5 before this COVID. I liked the Steelers at 4.5. So now, even with the COVID, it's gone up a couple points. I'll take the Steelers by a touchdown.
Good stuff here. 6 games on the slate. Fun. I mean, no real crackerjack games that we say, hey, Kyle, we're not going to spend that much time on this game. This is the playoffs. We got 6 games this weekend, 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. Again, we'll set the week up for you. Thursday, back same time, same bad channel, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to have a lot more information coming up again, obviously, specifically looking at that Pittsburgh Steelers, Cleveland Browns game. And then again, typically we have one show on Sunday that's live for kickoff at 12 p.m. This week, we're going to double the fun. Saturday, 12 p.m. to get us set up for those 3 games on Saturday. And then once again, Kyle and myself will be back 12 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, setting up that fantastic Sunday slate of NFL football. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching. A couple hundred people here in the chat box. Awesome stuff. Spending your Tuesday afternoon talking a little bit of Super Wild Card Weekend football. Hope to see you on Thursday. I'm Donnie Seymour. He's Kyle Purviance. We are sportsbookreview.com. And this was your opening line show for Super Wild Card Weekend. Good luck.